Well, hello there. I really do hope that you're having a lovely evening from wherever you're watching. My name is Nina Shivan. It's time for the Big Ten, where we take a look at the stories that have been making headlines all through the week, and that's from Monday to Friday. So let the countdown begin. We begin with the continuous progression of events on the U.S.-China trade war. Day one of the U.S.-China trade war, or rather trade talks, ends with hopes for limited deal. The top U.S. and Chinese negotiators wrapped up a first day of the trade talks in more than 2 months on Thursday, as business groups expressed optimism that the two sides might actually be able to ease the 15-month trade war and delay a U.S. tariff like a hike scheduled for next week. U.S. Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin and U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer met with Vice Premier Liu He and other senior Chinese officials for about 7 hours at the USTR's headquarters near the White House. So we had a very good negotiation with China, the U.S. President Donald Trump told reporters after the talks concluded. He reiterated his plans to meet with Liu at the White House on Friday, regarded as a good sign. A White House official said that the talks had gone very well and probably better than expected. A smiling Liu waved to reporters before departing the USTR in a black Cadillac without answering questions. The two sides were due to meet for a final day on Friday, and as the negotiators could agree to a low-level early harvest agreement on issues such as currencies and copyright protections, despite increased irritants between the world's two largest economies, a U.S. Chamber of Commerce official briefed by both sides said early on Thursday. Myron Brilliant, the Chamber's head of international affairs, told reporters that negotiators were trying to find a path toward the bigger deal with progress on. Now, market access and less controversial intellectual property and other issues. Trump launched the trade war against China with demands for sweeping structural reforms, but Beijing has indicated it is not willing to fundamentally change the way it controls China's economy. Asked by reporters on Thursday whether he was prepared to accept a quote-unquote smaller deal, Trump did not answer and walked away. Previously, the president said he did not want to have a more limited deal, preferring to hold out for the one that was broad in scope. All right, now we bring it closer to home, where Bank of Uganda reduced the central bank rate, that's the CRB, by 1 percentage point to 9% in October 2019 from 10% in August 2019. According to the Bank of Uganda Governor Professor Emmanuel Tumisime, the reduction in the central bank rate is in response to the expected path of macroeconomic indicators and the international economic environment. Mutabile said that the country's inflation outlook has been revised downwards compared to the August 2019 forecast. Annual core inflation rate is also projected to remain below the 5% target until the fourth quarter of 2020. Uganda's economy has continued to grow, but at a slow rate, and economic activity is slackened in the first half of 2019 in comparison to the second half of 2018. Okay, so in Rwanda, Made in Africa smartphone in Rwanda, the first Made in Africa smartphones were launched. The Mara X and Mara Z were launched as the first Made in Africa models. The two smartphones will be using Google's Android operating system and cost 175,750 Rwandan francs, which is about $190 and 120,250 Rwandan francs, which is about $130 respectively. This will compete with Samsung, whose cheapest smartphone costs 50,000 Rwandan francs, that's $54, and non-branded phones at 35,000 Rwandan francs, and that is $37. Mara Group CEO Ashish Thakar said that the company is targeting customers willing to pay more for quality, and he further said that the Mara Group is the first company that is making motherboards and subboards entirety. Now, there are over 1,000 pieces per phone, and the plant cost $50 million and plans to make 10,000 phones per day, with hopes to profit from the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, a pact aimed to forming 55 nation trade blocs to boost sales across Africa, which is due to being in July next year. Crossing over to Zimbabwe, on Wednesday, the government announced an increase in electricity tariffs in order to boost revenue for more power generation and imports. The increase comes at a time when the country is grappling with severe power cuts affecting consumers countrywide. In addition to that, the country's economy is projected to contract by up to maybe 6% this year due to a drought that hit farming output, but is expected to rebound next year on better agricultural prospects. This is according to a treasury document being seen by the Reuters on Monday. Now, last week, Zimbabwe's president Emmerson Mnangagwa admitted that the nation's economy was ailing, requesting for more patience to allow the government to fix the country's rapidly deteriorating economy. Back home, the Kenya Revenue Authority plans to net 3.6 million more taxpayers in the next 2 years. The taxman is targeting 7 million active taxpayers by 2022 from the current 3.9 million taxpayers under the recently launched 7th corporate plan. The target has been set against the backdrop of the growing pressure to increase revenue to help meet the country's growing stock of public debt that is now approaching 6 trillion shillings. Take a look.
The pressure is on the taxman to collect 2 trillion shillings by the end of June next year. Among the steps that the Kenya Revenue Authority is taking to achieve that target is to bring an additional 3.06 million taxpayers into the tax net by 2022, a move that will bring the number of active taxpayers to 7 million.
So from Kenya Power, we have very rich data, which actually from there we'll be able to know how many people are owning meters in this country, how many people own property, and how many of such are actually declaring their rental income to us. We also have data we are getting from other sources like NTSA. So the data management we have, we are using the data mining to flush out inconsistencies. And these inconsistencies, like after the end of filing period, we'll be able to know automatically how many taxpayers filed, how many taxpayers are non-filers, how many are nil filers, and out of these nil and non-filers, do they have any other business transactions?
With a widened tax base, the National Treasury plans to ensure that Kenya's public debt levels are brought down to reduce pressure on revenues. The latest official data indicates that the ratio of public debt to tax revenue has increased from 52.2% in 2017 to 61.0% in 2018. This means that 6 out of every 10 shillings in taxes collected goes into paying the country's national debt.
Our debt levels they are sustainable, but we want to be more proactive by making sure that we retire all the commercial loans. Loans that we are paying at 8% or 9%. Loans that we are supposed to pay within a very short time. That's going to put pressure on our revenue. We want to retire these by making sure that we only embark on the multilateral borrowing.
The Treasury CS comments coming hot on the heels of his proposal to raise the maximum public debt limit to 9 billion shillings. In addition, the CS says the government will put the debt limit as an absolute figure and not as a ratio of the GDP in order to allow for more transparency.
Rather than hiding under, expressing as a percentage of GDP, sometimes calling it NNI, the national net, income, terms that, the members of the public, people on the streets, will find it very difficult to digest, even to understand. So that's why we want to be more transparent by fixing the amount and working towards that. Because in this country, all our expenditure can only come to light if Parliament appropriates the budget. And in appropriating the Parliament also fixes the amount of money that we can borrow.
Kenya's debt stood at 5.809 trillion shillings as at June this year. But with the Treasury now proposing to raise the limit of public debt to 9 trillion shillings, it would seem the taxpayer may have to prepare himself to deal with the bigger appetite for debt by the current administration. Rosemary Kinyanjui for Metropol TV.
Hand in hand with that, members of Parliament on Wednesday approved a request by the National Treasury to raise the public debt ceiling to 9 trillion shillings from 6 trillion shillings. During the debate, members said that the move would improve the country's image in the eye of donors and also enable national government retire old loans. The legislators, however, sought an assurance from the National Treasury that they borrowed money would be, or rather the borrowed money would be prudently spent. And the question is this the best way to handle Kenya's debt crisis?
As for that opinion, say aye. As many as a counter opinion say no. The ayes have it.
Since when, Honorable Speaker, did you see in this country that almost on the 10th of October, not a single shilling of development expenditure has been sent out to government ministries, even your own CDF? Those who have been here long enough can tell us, Honorable Speaker, that by now at least we would be having money for bursary, at least the first 20 million shillings for our bursary.
Moving away from the country's debt, we now take a look at the financial health in most Kenyan homes. Now, did you know that over half of Kenyan households are not doing well financially? Well, this is according to a survey conducted by the Central Bank of Kenya. The CBK's Financial Sector Stability Report states that 51% of households say that their financial health status worsened in 2018, up from 34% in 2016. The report's findings come at a time when Kenya's economy is said to be on a solid growth path.
Then you're seeing the economy is growing, but there are job cuts. That's the question you've asked me. But you have to understand two things. One, the economic growth is simply a growth of the economy in terms of GDP year on year. So it means the economy can grow even if it's one person who drove it up at the exclusion of the rest. And when you see some sectors cutting, it means that those sectors are participating less and less in the growth of this economy. It doesn't mean the economy is not growing, but their participation is diminishing at the expense of other sectors. So what we need to do is to ensure that everybody stays around. And how do we do that? We have to encourage the legislative environment, the license regime, the access to credit has to be improved to a level whereby any player, first of all, the field is leveled, so that everybody is able to participate. Because it's about participation. The less people participate, the more you're going to see whatever is happening. The more people participate, and by encouraging the small and micro sector to thrive, so that everybody has a contribution, even if it's 100 shillings, they'll feel the impact. But now what is happening is our economy is growing at a global level, but at the micro level, the trickle down is very poor.
Moving on swiftly, it has emerged that 500,000 financial institutions in Kenya are holding more than 241 billion shillings in unclaimed assets. Following the revelation, the government has ordered the institutions to remit all unclaimed assets in their possession to the Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority in the next 3 weeks. The authority has also launched a drive that seeks to reunite 100,000 people with their finances by the end of June next year.
The Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority has been in operation for the last 5 years. During that period, the authority has received 38 billion shillings worth of unclaimed assets. But according to the authority, the bulk of unclaimed assets still remains beyond its reach.
We commissioned a survey last year, And the survey did indicate that actually we have over 200 billion worth of unclaimed assets held by various institutions. So you can see the 13 billion you have received may not be all that there is. The holders here we are saying are the institutions. And we are talking of over 500,000 potential institutions that are known as holders.
The Cabinet Secretary for Interior and Coordination of National Government, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, has called for penalties on institutions that will not meet the deadline for remitting unclaimed assets for reunification with their rightful owners.
The Treasury and the Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority have given us a deadline of 1st of November for institutions to ensure that they declare to this organization any unclaimed assets within their books. I don't know how you work, but you know, us in national government administration and us in the security sector, we don't give people deadlines, we also enforce them. And you know, we make sure that the deadlines are followed. We don't give them theoretically and walk away. We ensure that something happens on 2nd of November when you have not given us the information that you need. So we can give you some free advice, like since you work with the National Treasury, there are some very basic things you can do which will ensure that everyone complies, like ensuring that no one gets their salary at their payroll by 2nd of November if they have not submitted the information that you need. Because you see, human beings need to be led properly and to be shown the way. This is the way things are done. So if you give a deadline, and you walk away about it, then on 2nd and 3rd of November, you start whining and moaning. You have not achieved your objectives. You must find a way of achieving your objectives.
Out of the 38 billion shillings in the authority's possession, only 7,000 claims worth 400 million shillings have been lodged with the authority. So far, 160 million shillings has been reunified with the rightful owners. In order to increase the rate of claims, the Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority, in conjunction with the Ministry of Interior and Coordination of National Government, has launched a rapid results initiative that aims to reunify at least 100,000 people with their finances by the end of June next year, the bulk of whom are said to be from Nairobi region.
One of the reasons we have noticed is that there is very minimal awareness in the general public as to who we are and what our mandate is. And that's why we felt today we partner with you, the Ministry of Interior, for 2 reasons. Number one is help us look for these fellow Kenyans wherever they are.
The Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority is currently in possession of 13 billion shillings in cash and over 500 million units in shares, worth about 25 billion shillings, among other assets. According to the authority, the banking sector contributes the bulk of unclaimed assets at 60%, followed by listed companies and telecommunication companies. Rosemary Kinyanjui for Metropol TV.
Now, in somewhat surprising news, Singapore has overtaken the United States as the most competitive economy in the world. According to the World Economic Forum, Singapore came out on top with a score of 84.8, while the US in second place with 83.7. Hong Kong came in third, while the Netherlands came in fourth and Switzerland fifth. Meanwhile, Kenya slipped 2 places to rank at the 95th in the global competitiveness rankings. Rwanda, on the other hand, rose by 8 places to position 100, while Uganda rose 2 places to rank at position 115. Tanzania dropped 1 place to rank at 117th. Every year, the World Economic Forum, that's WEF, releases its benchmark global competitiveness report that looks at 98 indicators across 140 countries to determine the overall ranking. And finally, our number 1 story this week is about the human rights activists and youth groups who emerged to voice their concern over the growing level of joblessness that the country is experiencing. Now, the activists are demanding that the government moves in to address the country's unemployment crisis as a matter of urgency. But economic analysts contend that failure to innovate and lack of adequate access to credit could be the reason behind the slow generation of new jobs. Here is why Kenya's economy is experiencing jobless growth.
Every year, Kenyan universities churn out approximately 70,000 graduates into the job market. However, only 15,000 graduates are absorbed. This is partly what led to these human rights activists, in conjunction with youth groups, to hold a peaceful protest to raise concerns over the jobless state of the youth in Kenya.
Kama vijana tunataka serikali tusikize, manake wale wakikampaign wanasema hapa eti sijui tutawapatia kazi ama vipi, wakati ni sasa na ni sasa, si kesho.
We are below our demands as the youth of Kenya, and a call to action. Number 1, the amendment of the Financial Bill 2019, expunging the additional taxes in the new bill since the business environment is not conducive.
Yes.
2, we call for a national-wide conversation bringing together the unemployed, underemployed, innovators, and stakeholders to discuss which way forward for the young people of Kenya, who total up to 75% of the population. In this light, we are below our demands as the youth of Kenya, and a call to action. Number 1, the amendment of the Financial Bill 2019, expunging the additional taxes in the new bill since the business environment is not conducive.
Yes.
2, we call for a national-wide conversation bringing together the unemployed, underemployed, innovators, and stakeholders to discuss which way forward for the young people of Kenya, who total up to 75% of the population.
Kenyans in the streets have equally expressed their concerns with the growing level of joblessness in the country.
Hakuna pesa, kwanza uchumi mbaya, shule tuliambiwa masomo ni ya bure, tunalipa pesa nyingi shuleni, maji hata Nairobi hakuna maji, kila kitu iko juu.
According to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, Kenya's economy has been on a steady growth path, with the country's gross domestic product having grown by 6.3% in 2018, up from 4.9% in 2017. Further to this, the economy created 846,000 new jobs in 2018, up from 762,000 jobs in the previous year. But the reality on the ground does not seem to reflect that growth, as Kenyans continue to face job losses and businesses complain of an unfavorable business environment. Economists, however, argue that businesses that are closing shop and laying off employees are doing so after failing to adapt to the changing dynamics of the economy.
In other words, there are new business models that are emerging because of the disruption of technology. So we are not even seeing the cracks with regards to the loss of jobs. Expect more jobs to be lost.
The challenge is now falling on both the government and individual actors in the economy to make the necessary amends that will enable the economy to move on and even kill.
We have to encourage the legislative environment, the license regime, the access to credit has to be improved to a level whereby any player, first of all, the field is leveled, so that everybody is able to participate. Because it's about participation. The less people participate, the more you're going to see whatever is happening. The more people participate, and by encouraging the small and micro sector to thrive, so that everybody has a contribution, even if it's 100 shillings, they'll feel the impact. But now what is happening is our economy is growing at a global level, but at the micro level, the trickle down is very poor.
Kenya's economic growth between April and June this year stagnated at 5.6% for a second consecutive quarter. The growth recorded during that period was a drop compared to 6.4% growth rate recorded during the same period in 2018. According to the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, the decline in Kenya's GDP growth was mainly due to a slowdown in the agriculture, manufacturing and transport sectors, three sectors that hold the key to unlocking the much-needed jobs.
All right, so that's it for Big Ten this evening. Thank you so much for keeping it Metropol TV. Don't go anywhere. Sports Center is coming up next. My name is Nina Shivan. I'll see you next time.